And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it. And that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Tonight we're going to be joined by my guest, Courtney. Courtney says she has been experiencing a lot of weird activities when it comes to so-called groups of the upper echelon, the Illuminati, or the Freemasonry cult. Whatever you want to call these people, the upper elites, shadow banned, gang stalked, harassed, all sorts of activities that she said that she feels has been happening to her. And she's decided to come out about it over the last couple of years. So she reached out to me and I wanted to have her on an episode. But before we bring Courtney on, there's a couple things you can do. If you would like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, you can send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Or you can find me on Facebook, look for Brandon Tinfoil Tales. All three of those ways will get a message to me, and I will make sure to reach back out and get something scheduled for you. I'm always looking for new guests, so again, if you've had an experience, a story to share, or anything like that, make sure to reach out to me, and we will get something scheduled. I do enjoy hearing from my listeners, so even if you don't want to be on the show, but you have something you want to share, please make sure to reach out to me. I'm always willing to listen and enjoy hearing from you. If you'd like to help the podcast out, you can continue to share it around because word of mouth is one of the best ways to help the podcast. It keeps getting it out there to new listeners, and that's one of the best ways of helping the podcast grow. So for everyone that does that, just know I appreciate you guys. You can also help by leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcast at. So just one click does help with the rankings, makes the podcast more visible. It's much appreciated. If you'd like to become a member of the Patreon, you can go to the show notes. You get access to all of the episodes ad-free, about 2 months early. You get exclusive content only available on the Patreon. All members, either free or paid, get access to Crinkle Conspiracies, the podcast that I'm doing with Ed Corella, exclusively on Patreon. For more information on that, you can check the show notes. There is merch available now. You can find more information about that in the show notes too. But I think now we're going to go ahead and bring Courtney on. Definitely looking forward to talking with her. I kind of remain hesitant and skeptical on a lot of stuff like this because I feel like if there is a group out there, maybe I don't want to rock the boat too much, but at the same time, I'm not that concerned about it. So here we are. I recommend for everyone to keep an open mind, draw your own conclusions. But I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take the time to welcome my guest tonight, Courtney. Thanks for coming on here and talking to me.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm an author, and I've got 3 books published out in the world right now. The first 2 were self-published, and then I had written something that went really crazy viral called Dear Human. And that was a meme and kind of a poem and a love letter to humanity that came out in about 2012. And then it went, so viral that we stopped kind of tracking it at 1 billion shares and things like that. So that, became this thing that almost hijacked my life. And I've done other podcasts previously talking about being kind of on radars that you don't necessarily want to be on, even though you think you do. So specifically, I'll just say it, Oprah's. And it was something that, having grown up in the 80s, and 90s, my mom would always have Oprah on in the living room, and I'd just be kind of coming in to grab a snack or go back outside to play with friends. And I just remember, who is that sad lady? I just always felt like she looked so sad. She had this kind of booming powerful voice that just seemed like it was hiding the insecurities of like a little girl in pain. And I knew that at age like 13. So fast forward, many decades or, and I've written, a book, and I've got this thing that's getting some, traction and some attention. And one of the people who kindly blurbed for the book was Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she was kind of 1 degree away from Oprah, and one of her darlings went on tour with her and everything. And so I know that I was on the radars. I also had a publicist who put together a really professional seeming proposal that I'd sent around to a whole bunch of Hollywood people, a whole bunch of literary giants. And, over the course of the years to come, I would kind of discover and learn the very hard way that Oprah is pretty much the gatekeeper for the entire publishing world. And so you don't want to piss off Oprah. I was actually recently at a disclosure event, and that was they had a publicist there and a publisher and a lawyer, and they were talking about getting your story out into the world and getting it published. And that was the caveat, that was, you don't want to piss off Oprah. Well, I blew it and I pissed off Oprah. So, that became a really tangled, weird thing. And then through stumbling through that experience of what I can only really call hazing, and very cagey, kind of gang stalky, gaslighty stuff that went on for years. And I just at first was like, oh, you're crazy. You're delusional. There's no way this is happening. These people, the elites, they have so much more to worry about than little old you, just because you might have had this one, golden ticket, golden goose, one hit wonder moment. They're not looking at you. And yet that it seemed like they were. And I would show timestamps and I'd put something up and it would show up in one of their, stories or something. And by they, I mean like people like the Kardashians, and because Chloe had retweeted the thing I wrote, Dear Human, and then that got it on, certain other radars. And they're very incestuous in that realm, in the fame realm, is something I learned also through the course of this. I would call it a combination of like mean girl, antics, and what I came to find out through extensive reading and studying up on Freemasonry and the Illuminati in general is humiliation and hazing rituals, vetting, recruiting to see, how the initiate will do under extreme duress. And they used to do it much more physically, and they still do, but they've also moved it over into cyber torment, which is what I was experiencing basically. So yeah, so that all kind of, the timeline is that the book, the meme came out in 2012. The book came out by Findhorn Press in 2016 with Liz Gilbert's endorsement. And then it was kind of after that things started getting extremely weird. I was doing some intuitive counseling kind of reading sessions on a pier in a beach town in Old Orchard, Maine. And it was like 12-hour shifts, and it was a 99-day summer kind of honky tonk, like toe rings and corn dogs kind of place. Family, bring the family for the cheap kind of staycation, the kind of way I grew up as a middle-class kid myself, of just, beach vacations in the summer on a budget kind of a thing. So I was there doing, check-ins and sessions, and I used to joke that when I was growing up, my extremely Catholic father used to give me the $5 or the $10 to go see the lady, the fortune teller, the palm reader, the mystic, the gypsy, whatever. And then I kind of along the way became my own version of the lady, And so there were 12-hour shifts. I'd wear like my bathing suit and a little sundress over it. I'd take dips in the ocean in between, and that really helped. But during one of those summers I was doing this, I believe I was sent in the same week a Fed who came and got a connection with me, a reading. And she had me she had some back pain. So I do some energy work too. And so I put my hands on her lower back and gave her some messages. And, it was really only like a 15-20 minute exchange. But then when she went to pay me, she was pulling out like $100 bill. And I was like, oh, that's really generous. And she goes, no, it's worth it. You help me alleviate some back pain that I've been having for 15 years and just popping Advil like they're candy. And that's the first time I've had relief other than like going to the chiropractor or, getting a massage or something. So thank you. It was just like 10 minutes and she felt something lift. So I was like, well, really glad you liked your sessions. She's pulling out her FBI badge and she's paying me. And that was a weird one. And then like 2 or 3 days or maybe a week or something after that, a couple came and they were a bit older. And, the woman had worked, they're both retired, but it was her birthday. And so I gave her a session. She said, "Oh, you are the real deal, this and that." And she said, gave me her card, and she'd worked in the White House. She'd worked, very high up in the administrations, from Carter up through Obama. And so she really, liked what I was doing. And at that point, I'm starting to notice a pattern of like, hey, I've been doing this for a while. Started kind of with friends and family and on my own seeker journey to try to help people, connect to their own higher self or whatever you want to call it. Because I've heard some of your previous shows, and like you, I'm kind of apolitical and a-religious, but I do keep a connection to source and spirit and whatever people want to call it, creator, God, Allah, Buddha. People have different names for the one true, source of all, right? Prime directive, if you want to go science fiction. But so I have a strong faith. I've always been kind of on this journey one way or another. And that one week it felt like, okay, I'm on some radars here and I'm being, vetted in some way or tested to see what my quote unquote spiritual gifts are. And that's really what, through again later on extensive reading. At the time I was very naive and green and had no idea what was going on, but found out that that's how Freemasons operate. Is they will find their target. They will, if they think you have any kind of occultic skills or skills to be able to kind of, not even, I don't want to say the word predict. I think it just gets such a bad rap. Like the movies do it all really supernatural and paranormal. And I think of it more like metaphysical. And I call it like social work with cards sometimes, and I'm even moving away from the cards. I don't really necessarily need them. I can just tune into the person. Because I know that could be problematic for some people are like, witchcraft. Definitely not. But yeah, so they were kind of watching, and then weird things would happen. And I was like staying in a Buddhist community, and a Black Ops helicopter was just swirling right above my cabin in the middle of nowhere. And then prior to that, when I had still been in Maine, was in the middle of nowhere again, and it was like a little farm town where it'd be more people with like work boots and plaid shirts and down home, and there were these guys with suits and earpieces there and standing very officially, and that had been after the Secret Service reading. So yeah, I jump around because that's what you do, and you're trying to remember the chronology of things. It's all so wild. So just getting this like Jason Bourne kind of thing, and I'm just like a normal middle-aged middle-class chick who wrote something that just popped off on the world. So I didn't understand any of it, and I thought I was crazy, and my friends thought I was crazy. I'm sure my family. So I just stopped talking about it. I didn't want to share, and I didn't want to keep getting the, as they call it, the pinched forehead, "Oh, you're nuts" look. And I knew what I was experiencing. I knew it was happening. I knew there was a component to it that involved frequencies and music, and certainly like I felt like my whole life was DJ'd, and so I did sort of check in. I had therapists at the time. I had good friends who were accountability buddies of if I felt like I was going too off the rails and becoming too obsessive about trying to like Nancy Drew decode all this stuff. But I was considered very sane, very balanced, just going through something. And they didn't, I asked, did they think I was paranoid? And they said, no, we think you're experiencing something, da da da. I asked, did they think I was schizophrenic and hearing voices? And they said, no, you seem very, calm and anchored, and you're not very changeable. You don't seem to have alters. So it seemed like the friends that did get it and the ones who didn't want to just shut me down and shut me up were seeing the patterns that I was showing them through like, timestamps and screenshots and different things that were like a phenomena that was happening. And they were like, but why you? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I really don't, and then you go back and you can kind of connect some dots back in time and think, well, maybe this isn't just out of the blue, and maybe there's certain things or markers that were going on. Like my Nana had worked at Harvard Medical in the labs. My dad was a superintendent of schools in Brookline, Massachusetts. My mom had been Miss Massachusetts. There were connections. It was Boston, right? And so Boston being a hop, skip, and jump from New York, and Boston being a very, very political town. And, I'd worked in lobbying and, met people like John Kerry and Ted Kennedy, and had worked in a firm that was, Tip O'Neill's son and everything. So that whole world is just extremely incestuous. The world of politics, entertainment, music, the media, they're all in my opinion, observation and experience run by Freemasons. So once you know that, like I heard your one of your prior guests talking about the Farm League Freemasons, and that's a new term to me, but it makes so much sense because people often think, well, it's just old guys in the lodge and they do good deeds in the community. And I think that may be true of like 32nd degree and below.
Mm-hmm.
But but then more and more people are understanding that the Luciferian stuff kicks in at 33rd and up. And so my dad had caddied for Sammy Davis Jr., who was a known Luciferian back in the 60s, helped him win a tournament, got to talk to Frank Sinatra on the phone. And then he played the back 9 holes with JFK when he was a senator long before he became president. So my dad somehow was a golden boy, was 6'4", blonde, kind of like moved in those circles a little bit on the edge because he was more like the poor middle class kid, and they were all the Rat Pack and that era. So you could just go back and back and back, and you kind of go, well, there's some, I guess our family is like Pilgrims or something, and Daughters of the American Revolution, and there may be some indigenous in the mix, who knows? But there's a lot of European things. So I think I'm bloodline? No, no, not at all. But I was in that sort of bizarre, gifted and talented program as a kid, and have come to find out from other kind of truthers, overcomers, and survivors and whistleblowers that those programs were pretty Masonic. Don't have much recollection of that. So my working theory is my dad was like pretty brilliant and was definitely mentored and groomed in his own ways to move up in education, and also had some very strong Jesuit ties with Boston College and the Jesuits, which, if people know or not, is basically the military branch of the Illuminati, and they are often sometimes called Opus Dei. So that's when you're getting into the big, dark, hairy, scary, international elite ring of human trafficking, etc. Epstein Island, P. Diddy kind of stuff. So again, finding out how the system works, doing my due diligence and understanding the hierarchy of it, their plans, how vast and connected it truly is, and being someone that they call a wild card that just sort of stumbles in, isn't necessarily born in or groomed in or married in, but just kind of starts, getting curious, or has that kind of, what at the time I had, fame hunger, and I would even call it toxic ambition. I just wanted to be in that world. I wanted to go to the parties, had no clue what was going on at the parties. It was totally wide-eyed and naive, like I said, and innocent. But then, as you get older, you start hearing things and you're going, oh yeah, they're not who they present themselves to be. And then you get a real education in evil if you try to get anywhere near their world, because there's barbed wire, there's glass, there's guns, there's knives. And I'm speaking metaphorically, but also probably physically, right? It's a very high wall, and behind it they have their umbrella, right? They have their umbrella of safety and protection. And so, like, people understand about fair gaming with Scientology and how crazy and hazy and like frat boy that can get and just like annihilate people's lives, reputations, block your love life, block your money, block your housing. And that's a baby branch of the Illuminati. Like, that's, not even the real deal of what they have come to call the family. They think about who uses that word really in an ominous way is, the mafia, the Illuminati. Freemasons call themselves the family, and gangs call themselves the family. So you can imagine there's a lot of cult pressure that goes on, and a lot of metaphors, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of story, and a lot of skits and snippets and jokes, because that's how they get the information to the recruit or the initiate, which, they're going to see if you can run the gauntlet and do sort of like a survival of the fittest, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, because that's why they consider themselves elite. They want the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the most intelligent, the most attractive, the most funny. You've got to have some kind of niche or skill. But that said, I'd also read in the materials, they don't actually want someone who is genuinely, naturally, just organically talented and connected to sort of the creator side of life. They want people who are sort of mediocre and can be shaped and brought along and molded and broken. So I definitely was not in that category. I'm just too feisty. I, was not a kid, and I think a lot of them get really just brainwashed and MK altered from a young age for their little NWO roles and their scripts and everything. And that's what we're seeing, in my opinion, again, like play out on the world stage right now. Is there may be levels of people's consciousness of awareness around these topics. Like you may know or think you do what adrenochrome or frazzle drip or any of these, hot button words are. But do people understand like that is Baphomet worship, that is Satanism, that is, demon summoning, that is witchcraft and black magic at its highest levels, and that is not science fiction. That is actually what has always run our country. If you just even look at our dollar bill with the Freemason symbols, right? But we know we were sold a bill of goods by them, about how they're just this, harmless group of philanthropists. And then you get into you understanding the practices of the child harm and on and on. And that they have the checkerboard, and the checkerboard is the dark side does the dark deeds, and the light side does the front facing kind of charitable things that are supposed to whitewash the dark deeds and balance it all out because they love their concept of duality and balance, even if they're not very good at implementing. But yeah, this may be common knowledge for a lot of people. It may be new intel for some. And I think just what I learned from being what I will call targeted by these factions, and specifically, I think within all that is the Royal Jester faction, which I learned about. And I'm like, oh, yep, that's all the high level comedians. That's your talk show hosts. That's, your Jimmy Fallon, your, James Corden, your Kimmel, your SNL people and stuff. So that's when they are funny, they rise up through the ranks, like Lucille Ball, Lucifer Bale, so she was a very high level Satanist in her day. And so comedy, ironically, they use comedy more in this sort of mockery, denigration, humiliation, roast way. And that's also how they will rise through the ranks, as if kind of a weird way to say it, but if you can make Lucifer laugh, he'll keep you around, and so I was taking all this traumatic stuff that was happening to me, and I was just becoming funnier and funnier and weirder and with darker humor. And I think that kept me alive, frankly. And at this point now, then there was also like this Operation Loverboy, thing they tried on me, which they do to a lot of people. They're going to send someone, all Illuminati matches are basically arranged, they or approved or both. And it's very, very rare that they would ever have anything organic, because there's a lot of bloodline stuff. There's the Rothschilds and so on that wants to keep their bloodline, good and inbred, so outsiders are not welcome, no new friends, kind of thing. And so then, yeah, when you sort of this wild card and you stumble to the edge of the garden party and you're peeking in the window and you're going, oh my goodness, there's orgies and crazy stuff in there. And again, I am speaking more metaphorically. I stay far away from these people and their hubs, because I like to say, in the US anyway, that New York is the devil's armpit, and then LA is the devil's other armpit, and then Vegas is his crotch. So those are, and that's not to say there isn't a Mason Hall and building in every town in America, but I'm thinking those are the places where they have their gatherings and their rituals, and they're more open in those spaces, from what I've observed. So I'm just dumping a lot on you here. Do you have any questions or clarifications or anything that's coming up so far?
How did you know that they were the Masons? Like, what was the giveaway to you that you like these are Masons, they're connected or whatever? Like, what was the signs for you that made you think that?
The hand signs. So, like, exactly, signs is the right word. So they have their whole language that's almost like the sign language for the hearing impaired, but they use mudras, they use different. And then I started to learn bit by bit and decode things. It was sort of like it would happen, the experience would happen, and then I'd be like, well, what does that mean? And why is this happening? And then I would go do my research and I would understand the playbook. You know what I mean? So I read about Fritz Springmeier, how to create an undetectable Illuminati mind slave. And that's what they all are. And once you like read his materials of how they break them, how they shape them, how they raise them, how they MK alter them and tweak that and everything over the course of their whole lives, you just like see it in them. You can just they have an energy signature almost. Like, you know, when they say if somebody goes demonic, their eyes go black kind of a thing? With Satanists, Luciferians, Freemasons, Illuminati, it's just this sneer. It's this superiority sneer that if you've ever seen any of them interviewed, they have that kind of sneer. It's a mocking tone. It's the double speak. So it really wasn't an overnight revelation. Basically, is the long and short of it. It was an understanding over time and study and careful observation and not stalking or anything, because like I felt like they were stalking me and I was just trying to stay safe, by understanding what they really were. And I actually have this, of course, wild hair bizarre theory that it's not even just Freemasonry. That's the human faction. Illuminati are the sort of celebrity version of that. And then you have your politics and you have your entertainment at large, your film and music and whatever. So I just because they kept kind of giving riddles and they kept giving hints and they kept repeating words. And then this was the kicker: I knew it was some kind of alphabet boy situation with like CIA, FBI, something, because I would write things in my private notes section on my iPhone and it would start coming out of their faces, like I was like scripting them. And that was trippy. That's one thing they do, is they do the mockery, they do the mimicry. They're trying to drive you over the edge and make you feel crazy, and they're using technology. Really what it is a bunch of rich assholes with technology and money. It's that skull and bones frat boy vibration and frequency of how much can we get away with. And then sometimes there's the positive reinforcement. It's cult mentality and cult tactics, which I don't think I would have known had I not, like, way back in the day, taken a college course on cult mentality and tactics. And I think it saved me too. I think it really helped me understand what, they're wanting to say that one world order, a new world order is is going to benefit everybody, right? And that it's one, we're all one. Okay. And so there is a version of that is, very pure and not dystopian and weird and hive mindy and AI. It is unity consciousness, but that is not something they're interested in, because you find out they're Satanists and they want to steal, kill, and destroy. And everything they say is like every day is opposite day with them. So there's a lot of crazy making, gang stalking. The signs that they're making are communicating, certain skills they have, rituals they need to attend, or they're making threats. They're doing devil horns. There is a threat. It's like, go to hell, it's hail Satan. And these people, they've got everybody doing it at rock concerts, like, and so they just want to put us all under these kind of mass spells. And I was just someone who, I think I was like the kid in the old fairy tale, like, the Emperor's New Clothes, where everybody was going along with it, and I was the only one that felt like, but that guy's naked, he has no clothes on. So I felt like the little boy that was like, but you're lying. And I mean, I felt like that way back when I was 6 and the priest was at the pulpit saying something, and would get almost not, visions or anything, but just feelings that he was disingenuous. And then later in high school, going to Catholic school myself, finding out some joke on the bus or something that one of the boys made about altar boys and priests, and then something clicking in, thinking this is not just a one-off joke or rando perv. This is like a phenom. And I think I knew that at age 13, 14, 15, when I was studying Atlantis for my, term paper. I was already, on the edge and fringe of things. So I went home to my extremely Catholic, Irish Catholic parents and said, I think this is a problem. And I think it's probably bigger than we'd imagine, and something that happens all the time. And they said, well, you can't say that. That's blasphemy. And those are men of God. And, there may be a perv here and there, and they'll deal with it. That's a church matter. And they just got really chastised and really, really frustrated. I felt like, okay, I can't even, say that I have this really strong intuition that this is a really rampant problem, because I got in trouble just for saying that. Well, again, fast forward 20, 30 years, and my gut was right then, and it's right now, about all this rampant pedophilia that's going on, and trafficking. And I don't want it to be true. And I didn't want it to be true then, and I don't want it to be true now. And I every day wish to be proven wrong, because for 7 years, these people, had teams, and it was elaborate and sophisticated. And then they would kind of go away for a little while. I'd get strong and grounded and support and therapy, and they'd come back. And it was like they were just like an abusive dude who's like winding up another punch, you know? And they do this thing called psychic driving where they drive you around from one to the other. So, they're trying to land you on who's going to be a handler. And I could see the covens, like I could see the teams and I could see the affiliations and I could see, and I did also, I will admit, I listened to a lot of this woman, Jessie Zabodar, who was a defector from the system to learn, not only simultaneously of what I was experiencing, had been experiencing, the reading I was doing that was correlating my experiences to their, methods and tactics, and then getting the backup from listening to Jessie, who'd been in from ages 5 to 10 and can decode all of it. Like she's just really brilliant at that. So I was getting, I was getting overwhelmed. I was getting stressed and I was just I was in survival mode. I was just like, they're going to kill you. They're going to kill you because you keep being vocal. And, I was getting like weird death threats and rape threats, and just being vocal and public and female and having an opinion is extremely dangerous, even just on the internet. It's really weird. It's a morass of you know anger and misogyny and fear. So I didn't really want to be the target of that, so I actually did go off social media for like 3 years, and then I started kind of inching back and dipping a toe in again, and the antics kicked up again. And I will say some of the chief tormentors and bullies through all this were the Kardashians, who I've come to call the Kardashians because that's what they are to me. They are the ultimate mean girl bullies. They will come up with new and ridiculous, diabolical, juvenile ways to try to gaslight you, like including dressing like you do, saying things again that somehow they're all being fed. There is someone said, I think it was Jesse, that they have their own internet. Like there's the black web or the dark web. They have what is called Node 9, which is my understanding from, this hearsay. I can't prove it, obviously. Not in there. Don't have a password, which is fine. Don't but Node 9 is apparently where they distribute things, and it's their own, private web, meaning whether we call it the Freemason, like high levels, the handlers, the programmers, the Sisters of Light are kind of the women's side of things and the light side of things, and then the Mothers of Darkness, and then they have, of course, priests, warlocks. They love their titles. You know what I mean? They love their trophies. They love their titles. They love their bling. Anything shiny, Rolexes, cars, yachts, etc. Fill in the blank. These are the prizes they get for the crap they do. And I just started to catch on to it, get less afraid and more annoyed, and then really enraged. And then, I think felt like I was auditioning for the first year and a half, or 18 months or something. And then I started to be like, okay, none of them is going to break whatever this weird blacklisting, blackballing, kind of hazing fourth wall is, and just act like a decent human and say hello. Like none of them has that capacity. And that was weird. And I thought, okay, I'm just not important. I don't mean anything. No big deal. Like I'm just another, fan girl or something to them. But then it was just weird because you get all these mixed signals, which they want because they're about confusion, chaos. But anyway, that was called Operation Loverboy. It's also, there's a song called Heartbreak Warfare. They do it over and over and over again. I'm not special. I'm one of many. They've done it too. It's kind of like those romance military scams that the Nigerian guys pull on old, widows to try to bilk them out of their money. But so you ask, how did I know it was Freemasons? Because it just kept happening and it kept being more and more elaborate and more funded. So it wasn't just your local, cops harassing or something, or though there was one guy who at one point had like really weird paparazzi cameras in the front of his car and the back window of his car. And he was like on the route where I was walking. I saw him a few times there and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is Colorado. This is not LA or New York, or like it was some little suburban neighborhood in Colorado. And he clearly looked like he was like a private eye. So just weird stuff was happening over and over and over. And the women, the couple that I had done the Secret Service and admin way up in the White House, I forgot to say this part, is pretty crucial. She came to my book signing. They both did. And then they took me out for dinner after, and they bought like 12 copies of my book. And she says, I want you to hand sign this one to Hillary and this one to Michelle Obama. And she goes, and I'll make sure they get them, and I will make sure they read them, because that's a love. So again, the timelines are wobbly, but that was back in Maine. And then, I felt like I was pretty heavily under weird surveillance, and my phone would get messed with and all kinds of things would happen that, you can kind of fluff it off once, twice, 3 times, even 10 times. But if it's just ongoing, then you go, okay, we're doing this. This is happening. Well, I don't know what I'm being looked at for, or what what the thing is here. But I think Oprah was part of it, and they watch to see if they can snag you in to the cult, if they can make you drink the Kool-Aid. And I was just not, I'm just not that person. So that was a journey and a push pull and a like a power play and all these mind games and just like, so yeah, I kept playing on my own side of it. I have to take responsibility that my curiosity is never ending, right? And so I did kind of want to Nancy Drew and crack this code and figure out what the hell was happening. And so I was just, yeah, studying all of it, connecting dots, seeing it then so clearly, and kind of wondering, like, and then once you become, you can see it, you can't unsee it. It's like everywhere, and you become attuned to that and stuff. Uh, but I was living in fear a lot, and I was having a hard time like getting roots under me, and I just felt like everywhere I went, it felt like there were, yeah, just kind of boogeyman. I guess that probably is when paranoia did actually kick in, and I did feel like they were legit gonna, like Isaac Cappy me or something. And when I saw what happened to him, like that was terrifying, because all the dude was trying to do was tell truth, but who knows how far he got into it, or what level of participation he'd had. And so I tell truth, and I think, well, they've diminished my voice and shadow banned me and censored me and made me such a laughing stock and called me crazy and done all this, like, like I'm invisible, I don't exist, I don't matter, I don't count, I don't have a voice, that, they don't see me as a threat anymore, or maybe they never did. But like, I don't know if you've heard of Kathy O'Brien, but she's a whistleblower too, who talks about having been in front of Congress, spoke of having been raped by Hillary when she was 17 years old, and having been trafficked through the system by her pedophile father. And, so they leave her alone too. And I think if you're really vocal and you're really clear and you have some divine protection behind you because you're supposed to be vocal and clear and truthful, then they will give you a begrudging space. They won't be so bombarding, and also you just get to a point where you're on to them, and so their tactics and tricks don't even work on you anymore. And they really like fresh meat. They like a new recruit who's green, and they can watch the fear reactions, and they can get that good old loosh or whatever it is, that extract and siphon energy from you from your fear. So as this phenomenon kept happening year after year, I got less and less afraid, because I thought, well, you know what? If they were going to kill me, they would have by now. And maybe I have some weird protector in the system I don't know about, some dark prince. Like, I don't know. Or they're just curious and they're going to see what I do next. And, they're bored, and I'm what I think they refer to as a living sacrifice. You walk around knowing who and what they are, what they do, and you have to kind of live with that. And it's a torment in its own right, because, if you start going down all the rabbit holes to all the levels, and, basement upon basement of evil of the things they do to both attain and maintain fame, not only do you become repulsed, and then of course you go through all the fear of like, oh my God, how can that happen? How can that be? And then you go through, well, it can't, it's not real. And you go through the cognitive dissonance, and over in loops, you kind of talk yourself in and out of it, that you want to be crazy. You want to be considered so delusional that everything you're thinking, saying, and feeling and discovering is just a lie, or just wrong, or made up because you have some void, and you need attention, or like, I've gone through all of that with myself, believe me. And the conclusions, unfortunately that I came to is, no, I'm not crazy, never was extremely astute, intuitive, and aware, even from a young age, of people's patterns, and when they were being authentic and when they were full of shit. And so it's a gift and a curse, my friend. I'll tell you that. And I'm not saying I'm 100% accurate. I don't think any human could be, but I keep saying, like, even to myself and to my spirit team, my angels, like, if you want me to know that I'm wrong, please show me. And one day I said that, and I said, I want to know that all of this stuff is real or not. And I want to know today, because I was so fed up. I was so confused. I was so exhausted. And I felt like, oh my God, if I'm supposed to be some freaking, truth teller, warrior, soldier of light, whatever. I need a little more intel here. It can't just be need to know all the time. I need to know today that I didn't just make all this shit up in my head. And that day, a woman came knocking at my door, and one of my packages had been misdelivered to her in the next apartment complex over. So she was kind enough to bring it over. She came in, she saw my place, and it's kind of cute. It's kind of artsy fartsy fun. And she goes, "Oh, this is great. What do you do?" And I told her, I said, I do counseling sessions and stuff. She goes, "Oh my God, can you do one right now?" And I was like, "Sure." So she came in, and we got chatting, and she starts telling me that, she grew up in a town in Arizona. And I don't want to give too many details away because it's her story, not mine. But basically, the story she told me corroborated what we are calling satanic ritual abuse, and it happened to be in a church. So the things she described, even the way these people were dressed, was extremely satanic. And so then I knew, okay, Satanic Panic didn't die in the 80s. It wasn't just some kind of Rosemary's Baby stuff or Manson stuff. Like, it is very, very much alive and kicking, very much, more powerful than ever with the technology piece. And it's something that people are really kind of freaking out about AI. And it's like, okay, but AI is, Luciferianism, Satanism, Illuminati, Freemasonry, whatever we want to put a, label on that. And then again, because it's your show, I will say I do think there's some kind of demonic, archonic, or ultra terrestrial energies that move behind these people and pull their strings. So if the celebrities have Freemason handlers in the shadows we'll never see, then I think the Freemasons themselves have some kind of off-world handlers we will never see. And that is something it's like how the only way I've made sense of how it can be so vast, so elaborate, so organized, how it can go back so far. And that, yeah, of course, there are benevolent forces and malevolent forces. That just makes sense. They've been selling us good and evil in every movie and ever made, and so they're just depicting what is actually happening within us and around us. And so why do I think they targeted me? I don't know. I could have had a past life where this little soul group or hive mind or cult or whatever, I pissed them off, crossed them, called them out then, calling them out now. I'm not their favorite. You know what I mean? Like, in some ways, I think they love playing cat and mouse with me and to watch, how I figure them out. But they also don't like that I'm not, that I, I'm miss like go snitch, tell, rattle and roll, because in the last 3 or 4 years of, this is the other way I know. I've definitely counseled a bunch of people who've had a lot of sexual trauma from childhood, and inevitably comes up this person had connections in either the military, high level up, or yada yada yada. And so these were not farm leak Masons that these people were. That was your grandfather, that was your great grandfather, your uncle, And so I would say a good portion of say maybe it was 1,500 people or something last, during pandemic. I would say, 1,400 of them had some kind of, child harm story that they were overcoming. And how I would know this is I would go, okay, what happened when you were 4? What happened when you were 8? What happened when you were 12? What happened when you were 22? And inevitably they would sort of burst into tears and say, how did you know? And I'd say, I don't know. It's just something in your soul kind of telling me that age. Was the best way I could kind of describe it. What I really think it is something in their face, something in their energy, their body language, and yes, of course, their soul that's always shining through our eyes, with crying to me for help. And I thought that the secret was killing them, is what I learned over time, and that not being able to say it out loud, not being able to talk about it, carrying shame about it that wasn't their shame, and then Me Too had sort of blown the Pandora's box open and the lid off in some ways. But then I was doing this triaging of these souls who were maybe not able to tell it in their immediate environment, at their, or be open about it with friends or at their workplace or even partners. And I was often honored and freaked out to be the person they were opening up to, because I guess if I honed in on the age where they were the most hurt, then I could say to them, well, here's a process I've, been given by my own, guidance, and take it or leave it. But I think you at this age, say you're 43 now and you're going back to 5-year-old self, you go in that room, you get them out of there. And you do a rescue now if you have to do it visually, in a meditation with prayer, draw it, sing it, write it, scream it in your car, whatever you have to do to release that from you. And then you just take that child out of that environment and hug them home back into your heart. And they would just weep. And I mean, I was getting misty, and it was just such a powerful experience, but it happened over and 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 over. And to the point where I was so angry. I was so angry and felt so helpless and powerless to help these people who had these sort of fragmentations. And if you go into the Freemason psychology, is they want to do that. They want to sodomize them as children and make them controllable their whole life. That's a way to force open the third eye and do a false kundalini bonding experience with the victim, and then make them live in fear of, if you ever tell, then so and so will die, or you'll die, or whatever, I'll go to jail. And if they're really bonded to that person, they don't want to lose that person, even if they don't understand that's not a healthy love. So that was devastating. And everything after that point, I think it was like creator sent it to me, because if I could help these people find some way towards some kind of healing around those horrific things that I did not experience as a child, but was now suddenly coming to me in just like wave after wave after wave, like it was horrific to think of how vast and how it crosses all kinds of race, and it crosses economic boundaries. And so I don't know if those lower level Masons are not doing it or doing it, or they know what's coming or they don't, but I know that at the higher levels, that is just a requirement. Yeah.
I feel like there's so much to take in from everything you just talked about, but when it comes to these secret societies, these people, the upper echelon or whatever you want to call these elites, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with it that is hard for a lot of people to understand, especially like if you've never dealt with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I learned, the common thread was a lot of these families had alcoholism in them. Okay. And so really, literally, when you open to the spirits, you open to the spirits. Okay. And so if a man, for example, is getting drunk, drinking, working hard all week, maybe say, and drinking up his paycheck on the weekends with the guys, and then coming home, maybe either passing out, puking, or wailing on the kids, and that did go on for a very long time. It still does. Then you have a recipe for generational, incest, molestation, secrets, and then it just keeps going. And then they want to wrap a religion around it, which is, well, it's all sacrifices for Lucifer. If I, do this and move away from Christ consciousness and creator source energy into darkness, then I am developing my enlightenment, because they think they're shedding their ego and their programming to be a good guy, to be a family guy. So they have that front facing kind of cover life where they're upstanding pillars of society and Christians and whatever. And then they, go home and drink or drug or, hand their keys over to the demonic portals and realms, which is like coming through going, yep, okay, thanks. I'm gonna go, have sex with your granddaughter. And then in the morning you're gonna have a huge hangover. You may even have blackout. And then everyone's gonna rush to your defense saying, well, he was drunk, or he didn't mean it, or he's a good man, or he made a mistake, or you have to forgive, or whatever other nonsense that my clients heard over and over and over, right? So yes, it's a lot to unpack because it is just so rampant. And I think if we want to really get into the spiritual explanation, it isn't just men, lust, and booze, and Freemasonry practices. It's a lust entity that attaches to the perp and likes the light of the Vic. And so it's really coming to just feed. And it's going to feed out of despair, like the Dementors in Harry Potter, flying above the Quidditch field, they're whipping people up. These people are in lust and they're making out. These people are in, anger and they're fighting. These people are in love and they're just kind of all cozy canoodly. And it's sort of like, that these entities, these beings, these off-worlders, um, feed on us, and we are their food source. We are their reality TV. We are their entertainment. We are their slaves as well, meaning energy slaves, right? They want to harvest you So they really want strong emotion. And I think the benevolence and the celestials probably do, feed might be the wrong word, but they are nourished and sustained by our advancement, our evolution, by when we do kind things and good deeds and the small acts that, benefit one another. That's then getting their wings in heaven or something, right? Like Clarence and It's a Wonderful Life. We do good down here, then or over here or under here, or whatever, interdimensionally, if you want, or time, quantum, I don't know. But I kind of sometimes revert back to my Catholic training of hell, heaven, and purgatory, and I feel like Planet Earth lately is a bit of a purgatory kind of situation. So yeah, so there's a lot to unpack because it is playing out physically on what people would call the 3D tangible earthly realm, whether you want to call it flat Earth, sphere Earth, toroidal Earth, or global. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like how we treat each other while we're here in the sim or this matrix, right? But my whole thing of being vocal and why I have hope actually about these, this vast, yucky, sticky, demonic crap is never before have we had the internet to expose them. And they thrived in secrecy and keeping these practices in the shadows. And they will fall down again. They've already fallen, they're fallens, and they will fall even further away from grace because too many people know now, and too many people are becoming more in the know and asking more questions and connecting more dots. So we outnumber them. Somebody said recently 2-1, and I believe that. And they may have all the resources, they may have the cleverness and the long-standing plans, and they may still see us as sheeple and deplorables and profanes and uninitiated. But the human spirit is something they kind of didn't count on. It's that one variable that is the curveball and the wrench in their works because it's indomitable, it's resourceful, it's resilient, and it does when you step on its toes, say, ouch, back off. It does when you try to break or steal or siphon its soul and use it for your own benefit or profit. Say, I see that. I see what you're doing. I may not be able to stop you in the Mason-owned courts, or I can do what I can do in the court of public opinion by exposing what I know of you and how I've felt with your tactics and methods, and how it has been revealed to me what your character or lack thereof is. But yeah, I mean, we could go off on tangents, say it's UFOs, it's alien wars, and then it's playing out on the human realm. I do think there's an astral component, and that's where all these like warlocks and witches vie for power, and they have these apparently like pretty primal battles where they're trying to get seats on the Satanic Council. And Jesse's been good about outing a lot of that, so I recommend anybody could go look at her on Aquarius Rising Africa and a whole bunch of other sites, but that's one where she does a lot of her deep diving. But I think that's when then I started looking and trying to find materials of people who'd been in masonry and left, and how they were treated, and how how some of them got to live and some of them didn't, and it would just almost seem like a big dark lottery, and you don't know if they're still trying to maybe flip you, or if someone in the system has a little shine for you and it just wants to keep you as their toy. Like, you don't know, and you'll never know because you don't have the same resources they do, right? So you just have your voice and your story and your impressions and your research data that you've then kind of applied and implemented, and then also the anecdotal evidence overwhelmingly of the people who have been harmed as children, who are now adults and who are recovering and putting their own puzzle pieces together, and doing it hopefully with compassionate people who can hold space for them to grow into the adult they came here to be. Because so many of them, this is something I will say about the Illuminati in general, are children. They are broken vampire children is kind of the softest way I can say that. And then they continue to perpetuate the cycles of abuse, and they think it makes them special and illuminated and enlightened, and it just makes them sad, weak, and caged, with golden handcuffs. So I do believe that more people, whether we're talking like boots on the ground kind of thing, or more of the war of consciousness kind of thing, are just really going to get to that place where it's going to be some kind of other version of a Bastille Day, and just the oppressors are going to be held accountable one way or another. And I'm not someone who would ever advocate violence by any means. I don't think that's the way we need to do it. I don't think that's effective. I think it just begets more violence. That said, I think you got to keep your kids safe at all costs and make a better, safer world for the generations to come. So people like me aren't sitting in rooms with, more harmed children because people were afraid to speak up about it, to push back on it, to say, no, you won't do that, and no, you won't get away with it. So that's where I'm encouraged is that, again, they thrived in secrecy and their vow of silence. I do think enough of them now are at a tipping point where they are freaking sick of that vow of silence themselves. It is not easy or fun, I'm sure, to live in an inverted gendered body, which happens a lot with the elites and the Illuminati. They're presenting as one gender and they're really structurally something else, and so that's part of that Baphomet agenda and the agenda of long-term depopulation and eugenics and wanting to have more lab created humans than organic naturally procreated humans. And so they're just one way or another. I was never going to think I was going to be someone to grow up and be like, it's the government, man. Like I am not that person. But having been now someone who has had some gaslighting moments with Obama himself through the airwaves, I just don't respect them. I don't respect them. I had voted for him twice. These people I know too much now about what they really are behind their personas and their masks, and I think they both love that and hate it about me. And I think that's one reason again I'm still around is I'm an anomaly to them. They cannot put me in a box. They cannot just write a check and have me roll over and be part of their, gross running train gang rape initiations, which no thank you. Never, So they literally do go to, rituals and sign their name in blood, apparently in contracts. They put, little trays of cocaine or, meth or whatever out in front of a hotel room. And then this is from a senator, Senator Lynn Wood said, they will do gun, child, and camera. And so they'll put them in a room, put a gun to their head. They've got a child doing stuff and they're filming it. And then they're owned for life. And that's all of them. It's like zero exceptions. So if they get to that level of A-lister mega fame, they've all been through the paces, which is why you see a lot of them start looking super demonic. And that is more than filler. That often is probably a Drano face, or something shining through there that ain't the human host anymore at that point, because it just seems so obvious with some of them, right? That's not just bad aging. That's not bad surgery. It's just it all looks very demonic and clown-like at a certain point. Maybe Nephilim or something. I don't know. I'm not like that biblically scholarly, up to par or speed on Revelation or any of the end times or any of that stuff or Ascension. I don't identify as pagan or Christian or New Age or atheist or anything. I'm very much a spiritual person. I very much have a connection to Creator, and I say I left the church and kept Jesus. That's kind of where I land with all of it, because we are in astral warfare, man. We are in spiritual battle, and I'm not someone who wants to play the doom and gloom side of that. I'm believing evil at this level can be vanquished as is revealed and exposed. It can no longer slither in the shadows. It has to come out and be seen in the light. And then it has to transmute, because it's not sustainable to have a planet where you keep raping, sodomizing, and cannibalizing your own children. That's where I do think more of them are not quite human, because most humans, if you're not a total psychopath or narcopath or pedovore, want to protect the innocent and the vulnerable. And so something, their humanity switch or something has been turned off somewhere, somehow. And that's got to be more than greed, more than lust, more than blackmail. I think there's something there that is, I'm not going to even say Draco or reptilian or gray or any of that, because I don't know. I really don't. Could be a hybrid of a lot of things. Demonic, archonic, negative, just entities that are kind of, I think, more from the void, where they have no operating system of their own. So they have to come and again, hijack and feed off humans and pit us against each other. And that's dying, because the more people that understand, the technological parts of it, the wealth influence of it, and then the spiritual aspects of it, like they're game over. They rely on, people's ignorance and on secrecy. And more people are having more conversations like this, more and more every day at their dinner table, let alone, on a podcast or something. And then it goes where it needs to go, and it enlightens and awakens those who are ready, and the ones who aren't just think you're batshit crazy. That's okay too. Tinfoil hat, man. you know?
It's the name of the show.
That's right. Yeah. So we get to explore different theories, whether they're conspiracy theories or truth plus time. Because that's really what ends up happening is, oh, didn't you say that 3 years ago? Didn't you say that 10 years ago? Didn't you say that 20 years ago? Yes, I did. And what did you say to me? That I was crazy, insane, delusional, and, needed help. So I kept getting the help, and all the help kept saying, yeah, you seem all right. You're on some interesting topics and themes that I don't really understand or relate to, but you seem pretty grounded. And I was like, well, thank you. So, went to plenty of therapists, had plenty of talk therapy over the decades, and was determined, like I'm not that bad. And yeah, I have my own mental health issues and challenges for sure. And I get stupid celebrity crushes that got me tangled all up in this damn mess, and had some limerence there, but like very clear now that, if he wants to, he will. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. And, not living in some fantasy land, wanting to have a partner that's like tangible and present, and not someone who just jerks your chain or plays with your head or heart, because that's what they do, and it's a game to them. And to me, that's just maybe the most disgusting thing of all is, yeah, I've heard the horrible things they do to children and to animals, and they go to tent cities where people are, they're ending up in tent cities because of what happened to them as children. And then they reach for substances, and then their family throws them away, and tent city. And that's like a McDonald's drive through to an Illuminati member, right? Like they're not going to clean that up. They could. They all have the money 10 times over to clean those up. They're in their backyards, right? And they won't do it because that's part of their religion is, hey, that's an easy, quick person to disappear. That's an easy, quick person to grab for ritual. So, they just see us as, food and with dollar signs in their eyes. And people say, but not all famous people are bad. I'm like, yeah, they are. They really actually are. Can't be all of them. It is. It actually is. Because they take that vow of silence and they know what's going on. So even if they aren't some of the more heinous, programmer, groomer, recruiters who are really, out there just ruining lives with their lies and their bullshit, like they are participant by being, complicit, and by keeping that vow of silence of what they know goes on and profiting from it. So hate to burst people's bubbles with that, but they also kind of want them to get it like that, you can't be at that level of fame and not have done nefarious things. It doesn't matter how good the persona or the act is, or how intact the mask seems to be, or how you think that one's a really nice guy, or this one seems really sweet or really down to earth. No, that they are actors, they are acting, and it is a role. And when most of them, if not all, probably all, have been groomed for forever, probably most or all of their lives. So, I started to just really desperately wish that one could be good, that one could have some shreds of goodness in them. And every time I would kind of do that, I would get whacked down. I would get like a real smackdown of, why do you need them to be good? Why don't you just be good and do the best you can with that? Because that was like, oh, yeah, that part. That's a big epiphany I had is, and then define good. And does good mean you still have a shadow and you wish that, you have visualizations of, their heads popping off and them being vacuumed into space dust, very far away from anyone they could ever harm, the vulnerable. They seem to get off on harming the vulnerable, and they will use any host that will allow them to do that. I think that's the best way I can phrase the phenomenon is it's easy to say all A-listers are evil Freemasons, satanic Illuminati people who've, hurt children for fame. And that's accurate, but it turns people off and makes them go, well, that's not credible. but it's easier to understand if you go, these people are hosts and they have handlers and they're broken and they have MK Ultra, and doesn't mean like boo hoo poor you, they still have to be held accountable for crimes that say their body committed, if we're doing some kind of body snatchers, hijack, possession, like, again, I always call it like handing their keys over and then something else moves in and has a party and then leaves, and then they're left with that blackout hangover. What did I do last night? Again, it does not let anyone off the hook ever, because there are still things that even under the deepest, darkest influence of, like, say, the deepest, darkest drug or mind control or whatever, you still would have your moral compass that would say, no, I will not do that. And that sustains me of, like, there may be Grammy winners out there who it's just, when they pick up their trophy, it's like, I've killed a lot of kids, or an Oscar. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm responsible for a lot of deaths of innocence. And yet this is something that we grotesquely still sort of uphold and celebrate. And I remember going to Oscar parties, and I remember wanting to, be in that realm and put on the dress and the jokes and everything. And now I look at it and I just want to puke. I literally feel so sick to my stomach and so sad and so angry about the whole thing that I just feel a little like a Twilight Zone episode where, like, you're one of the, few people that's awake and everybody else is kind of like comatose, and you're trying to wake them up and you're trying to, a bomb's coming, a comet, and Chicken Little, and the sky is falling. And then you go, wait a minute, that's not my job. That is above my pay grade. I have to just find ways to be awake in this bizarre realm and try to navigate my own kind of life stream and my connection to not only my creator and my own soul, but to the people I'm supposed to, service to others, help, in some way, or facilitate them in some way, or learn lessons and clear karma from things that I experience with them, or I don't want to say inflict on them, but like bring to them, sometimes inflict maybe, but like bring to their life, like whatever kind of things we crash around on each other, those triggers are actually gifts. It's a dark gift. It's not one you ask for, when you want it, or when you're happy about, but your triggers, and being able to learn how to lean into them, release them, and understand where they come from and why they're there and how they're trying to keep you safe. And so that's more like the psychological level. And a lot of this is psychological warfare and psychological ops or operations. So if you get real strong in your mind, real strong in your soul, and real strong in your intuition, they cannot mess with you anymore. Like, it's your own mind and your own fear. I found with Masons, especially, that they want to, kind of weaponize your own mind and your own fears against you. And then their job is done and they don't have to lift a finger. They don't have to get dirty, or roll up their sleeves or get in the mud or do the work. So they do kind of pick people that have, kind of a fame ambition and a naivete. And that's their favorite kind of person to milk, and that's the category I unfortunately fell into. And now I'm too savvy and I know too much, and I'm not impressed with them, and quite the opposite. I'm pretty repulsed. So I think they just kind of, chew people up, spit them out. That is what Hollywood does to stars anyway. Whether you make it in the game or you're just on the periphery or one of the supporting roles or something, or, you're painting the sets, or like there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and we're not just talking casting couch. We're talking lots of other, darker, dirtier, ritualistic things that they have to be stopped. So look, I just love to disappear forever on some level and just go be on a beach and write books, and even with a pen name or something, and have a partner, and maybe just go to the swim in the sea. But I would never be able to live with myself knowing that if I know things about these creatures and their operating system and their methods and who they like to target and why, and I can get that out to someone who would just be like, "Ooh, yeah, I thought I wanted to go, write screenplays or, be a production assistant on this film, but I'm going to be real careful. I'm not going to go to those parties. I'm not going to rise up the ranks too quickly, because that's where it gets heady and the money and the drugs and the offerings start coming in, and the soul starts becoming, they have more and more of a death grip on you and leverage if you're part of them. And if you do the things they do, then they think of you as someone to protect, because that's that vow of silence too. And I could see it. Like, I could see it in who stepped up, and who was team what and who was playing what role. And Like it just seemed really obvious, like cliques in a high school, and that was weird too, because I'd never, even in high school, I just was the floater. I'd bounce around to this group or that, and I never probably really fit in or belong in anyone, but I could get by in all of them. And so I never understood cliques or hive mind or groups, or it just didn't. I guess I'm more of a lone wolf and more of a free agent, and I just didn't resonate, or I would be the one kind of rejected or, you know, yeah, exiled. So it wasn't that new for me to be, kind of the one that was bullied, but it was new for me to start seeing why I was owning that there must be some sort of something that I had that they wanted, and not to get into my ego or like massive head pride about it, but to just kind of start observing and just kind of go, interesting. And I think it's all, experience, and it's all, just learning curve, and then shedding old programs and beliefs that no longer serve us to go forward, and as a humanity. And I mean, I do believe our individual, karma and journey and soul, whatever, are coming back to our core Christ consciousness, where, these things and greater shall you do. Like that's just tuning out the noise of the world and the temptations of the world. And I don't mean in some way of like, go sit in your garden with your Bible. If you want to do that and that lights you up, do it. Could be go sit barefoot, by a lake, that could light you up, do it. Anything that brings you more into your expanded self rather than your constricted daily, like, I gotta pay bills till I die self, because that's what the light feeds, the true light, not the false, Illuminati light, but that's more glamour or glimmer or false shine. But the true light of the spirit of the soul is priceless and should never be compromised for anything or anyone. And so that's why I think getting the message out of like, whatever they do or don't do, we may or may not ever know. But I think we do know. And I think there's a lot of like not wanting to accept it, because then we'll have to do something about it. And that probably scares a lot of people, especially people with kids, want to keep kids safe, but they particularly want to keep their own kids safe. And that's completely understandable, that not everyone's here to like be some kind of crusader, whistleblower, truth teller. Like, I think it's just more like, I'm just a human telling a human story that was kind of weird, had a lot of plot twists and turns. And someday I hope to have more of the puzzle pieces and more understanding about it. But at this point, it just felt like getting my psyche run through a meat grinder for 7 years. And for what? Like for some, ego contest, pissing contest battle, over who could break me, and or because I pissed Oprah off, or because I had crushes on John Mayer and Jared Leto and Snoop, and then like they start looking back and making little, like subs, like where you're like, no, that's not. Come on, Snoop Dogg didn't notice that I exist, and it's like you get caught up in that. You get caught up in that because we were curated and trained. And I mean, I grew up with that show Fame, with Irene Cara, the theme song of "I'm gonna live forever, I'm gonna learn how to fly high," and it's just like you want your name in lights, but you don't. You want your name in the books of trying to do your best and being a good human. You don't. I mean, perfectionism is so the satanic way, right? Like they're always tweaking themselves with surgeries and hormones and changing everything, and instead of learning how to accept and love and have grace for ourselves. And I even have grace for them. I have pity for them. I have contempt for them too, for the things they've done, for the cowardice of not pulling together and trying to make it better, to just cruise along in their complacency and their lies. I have deep pain over that, and deep agony over, that know that it was never my job to fix, save, rescue, or heal any of them, or to rise them up back, into the arms of real truth or real love or real creation. But it was my job to hold up a mirror. And I actually kind of had fun with that, if I'm honest. I don't think they did, but I did. And so I did that for a while, and now I'm even moving away from that and just like, okay, what's the role I want to play next? And I think that's what all of us, however we grew up, if it was humble beginnings, if it was silver spoon, if it was, kind of more farm league or this upper echelon, very hoity-toity stuff. Like, there isn't a person alive that hasn't been Freemasonically influenced, and for the negative. And so if you start taking your power back from noticing the symbolism, understanding their, their rituals, understanding their levels, understanding their hand sign language, they have nowhere to go. They can't go back and slither into the shadows because now the light is getting brighter and brighter and brighter and stronger, and it's shining in their eyes, and it's waking them up out of their MK Ultra coma too. If they have alters who've, maybe this altar is an assassin, or this altar is a beta kitty, or this altar, performs in front of the stadium, and it frees them from their, grip of these, again, demonic, archonic programs, thought forms, the mental slavery, right? Like, we know Bob Marley said that, and that was someone who unfortunately was probably in the system too. But free yourself from mental slavery. That's a good line, and we'll keep it, no matter who wrote it and why and when. But it's very prevalent for our times, is to free ourselves from mental slavery. We have to understand, I like to put it this way, but know thy enemy. You have to know what the other team, and I mean the darkness and the void and the malevolent factions that are eugenicists, that do want to wipe out humanity, that do operate on greed, lust, and power and blood. Like, that's not the team we want to be playing for at this point in our human evolution. Like, that is the team that needs to be and will be defeated through more and more people waking up and stopping supporting them. Number one, stop supporting them with your money, with your vote, with your time, with your energy, and stop putting them on pedestals. Stop giving them your money, stop giving them your vote. Just stop. Just, like, withdraw all your support from these things and have alternate forms of entertainment. And it may sound easier said than done, because, like, everyone wants to take their kids to Disney, but, like, we now know too much about Disney and Nickelodeon, what that actually means and how those kids actually turned out. And it's not good. And so it's the crappiest place on earth. And Disney was a 33rd degree Mason. And, so they just peel back the layers of the onion, and it is all the Mason onion. And how is, like, they have this, like I said, sneer, and they think they're better than everyone, and they think they're the smartest, best looking, they're arrogant, and they are violent, and they are in total insecurity, vanity, and fear. So they're slaves to their own. They have their own mental slavery, which is that they have to achieve more. They have to have higher numbers in their bank account. They have to do another film and another tour, and they are worked basically to death, right? Like, they are milked until they're useful, and then they're thrown away or exited from the scene. And they have about 6 ways they do it. They do helicopter. They do, hot tub, drowning or heart attack. They do pills and overdose. You can just look, and you can see over and over and over again, from Buddy Holly and Kobe Bryant, and, Matthew Perry in the hot tub, and Whitney Houston in the tub. And, they just they're not original. They are very repetitive. And if you go back and back and back and back, you'll see it all throughout history that this has been going on and brewing for, these times we're in, where they just want to take over completely, and not even being that subtle about the satanic agendas, or that they want to enslave people and have a social credit system and this and that. So you have to not consent, and you have to, I mean, not all of us are going to learn to grow our own food or raise chickens, and not everyone is in a position to homeschool. But, incorporating more of those elements into our daily lives, so we're less and less dependent and more interdependent, so that when and if things do hit the fan this year, because it's an election year, it's very charged, and there's a lot of secrets and truths coming out on all sides, as does happen in those years. And when people realize, like, that's a farce too, that's just another game, that's just another distraction, then they're just going to want to keep it, like, really local and simple. And I do not mean like 15-minute cities at all, because we don't want that. We don't want our wings clipped, and we don't need to be, micromanaged everything we do. But, just being more in your immediate environment, turning the screens off, being more in nature, being, more present, because these screens have been one way they really really get us, and something I have to work on too. But yeah, so I really, long and story and long, or short story longer, whatever, everything. I just know it's Freemasons. I just know it's Illuminati. And the way I know is the first 2 or 3 years, I couldn't have imagined that were true. But as I started reading into their materials, their charter stuff, their a lot more is out there now than ever was before. Then I could just correlate and correlate and correlate and correlate the comms, the strategies, the playbook, as I call it. And what counters that playbook is when you know it, they can't run it on you. It's like if you have been scammed once by any of these, Nigerian groups, or like a friend of mine was out of her, life savings. She lost 80 grand in one of those military romance scams. If you've been scammed once, you know what it is, and you know who's behind it, and their steal, kill, destroy kind of methodologies, and how if you start getting tender or bonded to a situation or a person, then they come and they hammer you and they pull you in another direction, and they try to turn you into um, onto a new handler and a new handler and a new potential handler. Because every one they threw at me, I was like, no, thank you. Threw them right back. Because I'm not. First of all, I'm not someone who's going to be handled. I'm now 53. This started when I was about 45ish, and I was already too old and world weary and wise, even at 45, to understand, to not know what a scam was, what a con was, what it felt like, how, the tactics, and asking all the right questions and then getting redirected and, gaslight, gang stalked, whatever. Like, I knew what those tactics were. I just didn't understand why they were, using them on me. And if I was some kind of weird guinea pig, I didn't understand who did it, why. And I mean, at this point, I kind of don't care, because it sucked and it happened and it's not even over, but it's better. And so I just think people telling their stories, right? Telling it on the micro level, the macro level, tell it at your dinner table, tell it in podcasts, tell it in your conference rooms. Like, it may sound weird, but the more, and awkward, right? And inappropriate even in some settings, but the more people normalize talking about who runs the world and what are their intentions, and learning and noticing the hand signs and the signals and the symbols, and their times of year where they're it's their peak holidays and stuff, that really starts backing them into a corner, and it really starts helping people feel more hopeful that, well, yeah, they have the money though, and I hear that a lot, and it's like, yeah, but they don't have the real power, which is love. They have money, greed, and hate, and that actually diminishes their power in the grand scheme of things. And people don't necessarily understand that yet, or see it that way, because we've been so brainwashed that power means you have a suit and tie and a microphone. But really, look at us now, microphones, and I'm in my nightgown, and like, we have power. We have power from these platforms that maybe even got mocked a year ago. Oh, just YouTubers, you're listening to YouTubers, you're on that BitChute, that Rumble, that's the QAnon MAGA stuff. I'm like, no, you got to be able to distill a whole bunch of sources. If you can watch CNN and MSNBC and all the lamestream media lies, you should go to some alternative people. You should see if they're full of shit, or if you believe them, or if you feel they're credible. You should feel into that, and you should sift and sort and distill and find the nuggets of truth in everything. Because that's what a truth journey is you don't go partisan. You don't, have loyalty to any side of a cult that's trying to just pit people against each other and divide and conquer them and label them and give them diagnoses and pills. Like, that's all really not in your best interest. What is in your best interest is, know thy enemy. And then, you can form alliances from there around people who understand what that actually means.
My thing that I'm thinking about, and I know the listeners will be thinking this probably too.
Mm-hmm.
Are you afraid of what could happen by speaking out against it? If they're stalking you and everything else, I know they can say you're not important to them or whatever, but if they can do this to celebrities, like you mentioned, the guy from Chandler Bing from Friends, whatever his name is.
Yes.
What would prevent them from
I'll tell
doing
you
it
why.
to you?
I'll tell you why. I never got in. Okay, so I never took any vows of silence. I never took any payoffs. I never had any offers, even, because the more they tried to throw weird temptations at me, the more I was just kind of like pumping the brakes. So they have a weird sort of thief's honor that, they took the vows. If they want to offer me as a sacrifice, I think at this point I have been so vocal, it would be very clear who killed me and why, right? So there's that. That's a little bit of somewhat leverage. But I think they've diminished my voice so much on so many platforms that, like, this might get seen 500, 1,000, if we're lucky, 5,000 times. So that's nothing to them, right? Like, their news cycle is turning and churning every minute, and they're always pumping out new intel that people are like locking onto. Like, my voice will go where it needs to go and do what it needs to do. I have faith in that, and I hope it takes off. That'd be amazing. But I think that they are not afraid of me. They think they've subdued me, and then when I get vocal, they get quiet and they process. And I think there's one thing they really pride themselves on is valuing intelligence. And if they find intelligence in a human, they're gonna not leave you alone. They're still gonna torment you, but there is a weird grudging respect for intelligence, is what I want to say. Okay. And so if they do, they do. I feel like, again, I kind of feel like they won't. And if they would have, they would have. And I'm not in their club, and I never got in their club. And I do my prayers and my protection and stuff. I lived in a state of complete paranoia and fear that that would happen, until I kind of realized, if it does, I can't stop it. Being vocal may not speed it up. It may speed it up, but it may help, again, save a kid somewhere from falling into that fame trap, or into the celebrity crush world, which is just, they're out to crush you. They catfish in their own fan base. Like, they're really vile and they're really stunted, right? So if they love attention, they love anybody giving them attention, whether it's negative or positive, right? So do I think they're going to kill me? Maybe eventually, if they get sick of my mouth, but I think right now there's enough curiosity and a little bit of, like I said, begrudging respect. Like, they don't want to, but it's part of their religion that they respect intelligence. So, if you're not going to use that intelligence for them and their agendas, then yes, there is probably a less, because they don't respect much. I'm telling you right now, they don't respect life. They don't respect, women. They certainly don't respect women, because they're all trying to dress like us and wear women face, and trying to wipe out like a natural born woman, and get us to do all kinds of alterations to our bodies so we look like adolescent boys, right? So they do hate us, but they also like to study you and see what you're going to do, and that's that may have more value to them than my death at this point, and that might change.
I was just thinking, like, there's always the jokes that get tossed around about with Clintons, because
Yeah.
you cross them and you always end up with 2 bullet holes in the back of your head, but you suicided yourself. You've done it yourself.
It's so easy for them to go after people in their inner circle who really know stuff. Like, I've never been to any rituals with these people. Everything I say is just from research and from being cyber, kind of tormented. So they can just dismiss me as crazy. They can dismiss me as someone who's just made up all this in her head. And that's easy for them. And I'm not taking any of them to court, and they've never sued me for any of the things I've said. So I have, receipts. I have things proving that what I've told you tonight are true, and other podcasts have shown them on the screen and stuff. So I think there's a when I found out even whistleblower Snowden and whistleblower Assange are Masons and they're playing their roles, I realized, okay, but this is all a game amongst them, and they still never initiated me, or like stuck me in a coffin with graveyard dirt, or made me have a gang rape initiation. I mean, they have things that you have to do to actually be in the club, right? I mean, having feelings for people in the club is not going to get you in the club, so thank God. But yeah, they have pretty, strict rules themselves, even though they're chaos mongers and they don't respect like rule of law or rule of, like God's rule, they have their own weird rules. And if someone is not initiated, has not taken any vows, has not, or oath, or done any of the ritual, like, I'm untouchable. That is the word that is used for people like me. Not that they could snuff my life out. I mean, I'm not saying that, but like, my soul is untouchable. Do you know what I mean? And that's a bafflement to them as well. That's something that confuses them because they're all pretty compromised and they were easily, led there.
I think
So
it just kind of boils down to kind of what you touched base on just a second ago is you're not anyone famous. If that
right,
make like you're not prevalent within their circle. You're not out.
correct. Yeah.
So for them, but that's where I kind of go back to it too, is if you're not that important, then they don't have to worry about it. But if you start making too much noise, it's going to be easy for them to make it look like you wrecked in a car. Like,
Yeah. Oh, believe me, that's exactly what I think they would do. Like exactly, because for months before my car actually did die, and I just couldn't afford to replace it, I kept hearing car crash sounds. So I think that is one of their preferred methods, right? To get rid of someone who's too mouthy and bratty and noisy. But right now, I think they're still trying to flip me, and they still think they could use me in some way. So they poured a lot of time, energy, money, and whatever into trying to make me an asset and a liability. So I think they're, until or unless they have other fish to fry right now. I'm certainly not a priority. But yeah, I think I probably do put myself at further risk by being more vocal, or it saves me and protects me more. I think energetically it protects me more because it's me empowering myself in my own voice and telling my own narrative and my own truth, my own story, rather than the she's crazy dismissal that they would prefer to throw at me. So I don't really, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I tried to kill myself when I was 33. I was in the car in the garage, and my first book was called Lipstick and Thongs in the Loony Bin, right? And so they do a whole lot of mental health stuff and mental wellness stuff, which is what I had all wrapped into their human empowerment movement. I pretty much gave them the blueprint, and then they gave it all, to different people and different puzzle pieces of that. So, what they'll do is they'll take your idea, they'll cut you out of the loop, and then they'll taunt you with it and haunt you with it. So in their minds, not only am I not much of a threat, I'm someone that they have been able to make into a joke.
basically, for me, like, I struggle understanding the cult rituals in general. Like, I don't understand how someone could get involved in certain aspects
Right.
to things that people do. But
Yeah.
when it comes to things like this, and this is just, I'm not involved, but
Right.
this is just an outsider looking in and listening to what you're saying. It's hard to comprehend how people can be involved in something like that. But at the same time, and this, I can relate it back to something that I'm doing. There is a
Yeah.
lot of gatekeeping within this podcast realm, I've noticed.
Oh yeah.
And there is a lot of different things. Like, a lot of people would not probably interview you because it goes against their status quo. They don't want to do anything. You mentioned
Right.
views on YouTube, basically, like people watching. I can say, like, my channel on YouTube alone is not very strong because I've had stuff banned on there for things that was talked about.
Right.
So, and there's other channels that put out, I don't want to sound like a dick, but worse content than what I'm putting
Oh
out. Like,
no, you're totally right. Your content
and
is
their
premium.
stuff
It's
like
so good. Yeah.
explodes, and I'm like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
But I think my stuff isn't pushed out to, like, people. It's not suggested to them. The algorithm doesn't play in my favor because of the stuff that I put on my channel.
Yeah, they don't want you to like be exposing their Men in Black stuff, basically. That's what you're doing.
Like, I've had weird conspiracy stuff. I've had cult stuff. I've had obviously lots of different things, UFO stuff. There's a lot of topics we've dived into, and one of the things that got me banned was mentioning, I have to be careful how I word this, 'cause it'll still get me banned, but things that happened within 2020 and 2021 where they were forcing people to do stuff to
Yeah.
battle beast era stuff.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
if you
Yep.
mention that, you're automatically flagged and taken down because it goes
Which tells you
against,
everything you need to know.
yeah.
It tells
So
you that everything we've just been talking about is 100% true, because why are they trying to silence people? Because you're
exactly.
telling the truth. You're trying to expose, you're pulling the curtain and you're seeing the man behind the curtain and you're going, hey, that guy's, pulling some levers over here. They don't want that out. They want to control that very tightly. That said, for some reason, I'm able to talk. I think there might be some I will go so far as to say maybe some guilt at like, that I should have been dead by now and I'm not, and why am I not? And then feeling like all the cruel tactics they used to get me to that place of wanting to, delete or whatever, or unalive, or however we say it anymore. Like that is something that when it didn't work, now they're in this like, well, now what? So by no means do I think they're buying me a beach house to make up for, treating me like crap for 7 years, but they'll back up a little and let me tell my side of things to a certain extent. And then I might get a threat, or I might get, helicopters buzzing my little apartment again. But, I just, at this point, I've said what I've said. I've lived what I've lived. I've shared it. It's out there. So yeah, if I did go missing, people would know. And I don't think that's going to happen because I do have pretty strong protection, and I can't control it either. I figure if I'm going home, I'm going home. I'll go see my Nana. She's been waiting for me since the 90s. I don't fear death. I talk to, spirit all the time. And I think death is just a rebirth back home. I'm not rushing there, and I'm not trying to make it happen anytime sooner. But, if you try to kind of off yourself when you're 33 and now you're 53, I got 20 bonus years. And if I get 20 more, so be it. If I get 20 more days, so be it. I really mean that, like I'm really there. And that, again, that doesn't mean I'm going to go, dancing on razor blades or jumping out of buildings or testing the theory. But yeah, the car thing, it's funny you said that, because that is one of the ways that they do a lot of black magic. They'll give people heart attacks, strokes, and car accidents. So a lot of those are not natural, they are supernatural. And so now I Uber a lot and I walk. I don't even own a car at the moment till I feel like that one has subsided. But they do certain things to try to scare you and shut you up. And then when they realize it's not going to, then they will just go into quiet observer mode. I have noticed, so instead of bombardment, which then I will come out with something kind of forceful and clear, and then it does make them skitter a little bit like cockroaches, when the lights turned on. So I'm not by no means cocky. Like, do I think they could and may eventually take me out? Sure. But I'm gonna go down swinging.
Yeah, that's for me, that would be my biggest fear is when you rock the boat too much, you're going to just start drawing attention to things. And I've worried about that myself doing this show.
Sure.
Like, how much attention am I going to draw to myself? Because I have obviously a family and everything else too that I do.
Sure.
Like this, I do a podcast for my own, like, I'm curious about things because it's based off of stuff that's went on in my life. But at what point is it going to get to the where I'm going to ruffle too many feathers?
You shouldn't worry about that, and I'll tell you why. Of course, I understand that you're in Papa Bear protective mode of your family. Okay, so I'm not invalidating that, but we cannot live in fear. We cannot let them win, because if we live in fear, they win, right? And so I had to get past that, and I'm not saying that I don't think that that's something you have to process through, and there's real weight there of risk versus reward, especially if it's just more something you're doing out of a hobby and not out of like a conviction or a cause, right? But you want to believe that your family is protected, because if you're doing the right thing, and telling the truth is always the right thing, and giving people a voice who are in vulnerable spaces or have been, or who have a story that speaks truth to power or whatever, that is the right thing, Brandon. And so for me, that says automatically, and it doesn't mean don't have a ring camera or maybe a gun or something or a plan, but like it says to me that you have divine protection and dispensation to do this work. And if it becomes too uncomfortable or too risky or too scary and you don't feel good about it, then you stop. That's all,
There's been times where I've already questioned doing it just because, not even to do with this, but like just other things that have happened that make me question, is it even worth it? But at the same time, I feel like I need to do it. I don't understand why I say it that way, but like that's just.
Well, you're compelled. Yeah, you're compelled in a good way, right? Like not compelled like compulsion, but just a conviction from your soul is probably feeling a call to do it. And then I think the the comfort level you'll get to and the confidence level you'll get to is like you have really good guests who have really good things to say. And that may be a very small sliver of people who will be drawn to that or share it or even get it. But that's quality, not quantity. And you don't have to worry about like, am I going to blow up? Am I going to get on these radars too? Because no, because you're smarter than I was, number one, and you're asking the right questions now. And you don't have like a weak spot or a desire to be in that realm. So that I think also protects you. Like you're just an interviewer, man, and I'm just bringing a story that could be true or it could be totally made up, imagination shit in my head. But whoever needs to hear it will hear it. Whoever needs to or feels compelled to share it and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or, "Yeah, that one's crazy." Or that one's got some, truths and you sift and you sort. I want you to even sift and sort what I'm saying and take it all with a grain of salt because I lived it and I have questions. So I get that and I don't take that personally at all. I think that's what we all should be doing is questioning narratives, questioning our own place on this earth and our voice and what we have to share and how we serve that light and that spark inside us and do it in a way with some dignity, integrity, and honor. And that isn't going to always get you views and likes. But it will always get the right people and the right kinds of seeds planted and discussions going. And I believe in that kind of grass movements thing of things growing organically over time, because what happens if they go become an overnight sensation and get that fame too fast. That's when they hook them, so low and slow and, exactly,
Yeah,
and just don't go to any parties, man. You don't go to any parties. You don't go to any parties ever with these people.
I already know of a few people within the communities that I deal with that are that way. So it is very
Stay away
accurate.
from them. Yeah, swerve them. Give them a lot of space. They're like cockroaches and rattlers. They'll let you know if they're going to hurt you.
I didn't start this podcast for fame or fortune. I literally started it because I had questions and I felt like I had nothing better to do because of reasons, whatever. And this is my way of helping people. So.
And you're doing great at it. And you are such a good host and you have good topics and great questions. And thank you for letting me ramble at you. So I appreciate it. And yeah, have me back for a part 2 anytime, man.
Definitely. I'm going to wrap this up with a couple questions, but
sure.
Basically you said that you were being blackballed.
Yeah.
What were they doing that you could consider being blackballed? Because I've had people that I've had on my show that they have been recent guests, and I thought everything was fine. Everything was going fine. I don't talk to anyone outside of the show or whatever like that. But now I don't hear back from certain people. So I've wondered if the podcast realm is people just want to come on here and use it to try and better their own selves. But I don't, like I'm saying, what do they do to you? Because I feel like now people are ignoring me and I don't know what so it's like,
yeah, it's a very distinct feeling of being shunned. And it's a very distinct feeling of every door slamming in your face. And what you may be talking about is a phenomenon I've noticed just in general of people are really piss poor communicators and they don't seem to get back to you or close a loop of a conversation or like I was just trained that way. I was trained, and worked in a bunch of offices too of like expedient, quick, clear communication was the desired thing, and you and I have had that even just in setting this up. I appreciate that style about you. I have that style. I think that's going by the wayside. So that might be one level of what you're dealing with. But in what I was dealing with, it was sort of like I couldn't find housing. I couldn't find jobs. I couldn't get my book into the world further. I felt stymied at every thought. Like there was someone who bought out the publishing agency. My publicist was going through a bad divorce at the time. She was in LA. And then my other publisher, he was in France and his mom was dying. So when I say blackballed, I mean, there were some things that were more like stymied or blocked by the universe, but then also just this Oprah feeling of like, I was trying to tap dance for her attention and not knowing at that time when what she is and does. Apparently, allegedly, she's a queen mother of darkness in the satanic system and sits on the high council. So that's fun. That's according to Jesse Zabodar. That's been out there. That's not something new that I'm breaking here on your show. But anyway, it's a different feeling. It's a feeling of, yeah, you don't matter. And then you start seeing them take your ideas and even your certain phrases or certain things that you're writing or topics, and they're going to start mimicking and mocking them. Okay. So that's when you want to just kind of know, okay, they're playing and I'm not going to play. I'm just going to keep doing me.
I don't
The
know.
right people will always follow up. You know what I mean? Like the right ones you're supposed to sort of chat with and explore topics with. You won't have to chase them down. That's another way you know that someone is genuine. In my opinion and experience, is you won't have to jump through hoops for them. It will be very organic and easy, like it was for us to set this up.
Yeah. It's not so much like the guests I've had reaching out or whatever. It's more or less like the other podcasters and the other people within these communities or whatever. I feel like there's all.
Oh yeah,
there's
that's a competitive environment. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an agenda, and everyone just wants to claim their stake in it, and it's oversaturated and everything else, and everyone gets upset. But at the same time, I just do what I do, and I don't worry about the drama, because at the end of the day, this is what I do, and I don't care if people like it or don't. Like that's
Exactly. You do it for you.
you know,
Exactly. Hmm.
like the people that
Well,
listen, I appreciate them all. But other than that, like I used to play death metal music for years. I'm used to people not liking what I do. So
so you don't take it personally. There you go.
no,
Yeah, I think the main thing is if you start, keep stepping into your truth, your power, and your voice and your platform, because you have a great voice for this. So you are cut out for this, format. And you are asking interesting kind of fringe questions, which a lot of people are into. So, you could maybe cross post or cross pollinate with like Gaia channel, or, I don't know, other, like Ancient Aliens, I'm thinking of because of Gaia and David Wilcock and things like that. So like whether you get into those people or not, like you could just see where they promote and they market their stuff. And I bet, you would do well in the UFO disclosure communities. They're all into sort of the cryptids and the other species that we may be sharing the multiverse with and things like that, or Star Trek conventions or Star Wars or whatever. So I think you have plenty of ways to get yourself out there organically that don't have to go through the system, is my point.
no, I do everything grassroots. Basically, it's all word of mouth from anyone listening. They
Yes.
share it
There you
around.
go.
I do my own stuff. Like I don't try and involve anyone else in my business of what I do, because
There you go. Even
I'm
better.
I'm a one person show here, and that's all I want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but be open to the idea that maybe it'll go further if you want it to, and ready. And yes, let it go, crock pot, low and slow.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been growing steadily here in the last 2 years. I have no complaints. So I'm definitely appreciate anyone that's been out there helping it. But there wouldn't
Good.
be
Well,
a
you
show.
guys, yeah, you
There
got a
wouldn't
good
be a
show.
show without guests like you. So I
Thanks.
appreciate
I
you, and I
appreciate
appreciate everyone that's been on here.
Thank you. You've got some really great guests. That Skull and Bones one had me riveted. Oh my goodness. I
Mhm.
might have to go back and re-listen to that one.
No,
Yeah.
that was definitely a good one. I'm looking forward to diving into more stuff with him. But
Sure. All
I
right. Well,
want to
stay in
say,
touch.
yeah, I was going to say, hang on here real quick, and then we'll
Okay.
touch base here after. But I want to say thanks
Okay.
for coming on here. And if anyone has any questions for you, where can they reach out to you?
Well, I'm currently for this month maybe just a little bit on hiatus from Facebook, but I am on Facebook, Courtney A. Walsh, and that's how you could email me and reach out. I'm also doing this thing now, quick plug on being a book doula. So I'm helping people find their voice and their story and get their book into the world. And whether they just have an idea that they're needing some hand holding on bringing to fruition, or a manuscript that they want like an extra set of eyes for, I am putting that out there. So my email is the best way to reach me these days, and it's Courtney A. Walsh, Courtney, middle initial A, WALSH, Courtney A. Walsh at gmail.com.
I'll make sure to put that in the show notes when I upload the episode. But well, Courtney,
Perfect.
it's been a pleasure
Thank
talking
you.
with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally my pleasure. I appreciate it, and it was a really juicy conversation. So I'm looking forward to whenever this is ready to go, and I'll share it with my people too.
All right. Yeah, I'll let you know. Not a problem. But
Okay.
thanks for talking with me tonight, and thanks for everyone listening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep, you too. And that's the show, everyone. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversations. If you would like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to the contact section of tinfoiltales.com. Just get your message to me. We'll get something scheduled for a future episode. And just remember, the truth lies in the stories we share, the connections we make. Stay curious, stay open-minded. Thank you all for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep exploring the unknown. Good night, everyone.
Tinfoil Tales in the headphones. Yeah, it's time to rock. Got a story about a cryptic creature. Let's take a walk. Bigfoot, dogman, they're out there in the dark. But the truth is out there like an alien spark. UFO sightings got the whole world shook. Conspiracies unfold like a story in a book. Media control, trying to keep us blind. Oh, before gonna use my own mind. In history, they don't want us to know the secrets they hide, the truth they won't show. Domain of society, they keep us in chains. But I'm standing tall, it's time to break the reins. Control, trying to keep us blind, but I won't be fooled, gonna use my own mind. In history